So today we're traveling back in time to Santa Barbara, California, which is a place where I went to school. More specifically, there's something called Isla Vista, which is a little crazy city within Santa Barbara, California, which has to do with where the University of this city is actually located. It's not exactly in Santa Barbara, it's a little bit outside. It's a little smaller town. It's called Isla Vista. It's actually Goleta, I think, is the greater city that it's within necessarily, so to speak. I don't remember the exact zip code reference per se. I think the actual university itself still counts as Santa Barbara in of itself in terms of the location per se. But anyways, that's where we're at, and we're coming to you from, and necessarily it's this interesting town called Isla Vista. And the reason why we're talking about it today, the reason why we're bringing it up is because Isla Vista is this unique brand in of itself. It's this unique brand, and it's a unique brand that speaks to the spirit and spirituality. And also it's this combined with New York City. It's basically Isla Vista combined with New York City. Well, Isla Vista and the university, UCSB, which is connected to eventually develop the brand and be on brand with a culture that corresponds to this like little zone, this little area necessarily. It's called Isla Vista. Isla Vista is this cheeky, specific, unique zone, so to speak. I was like sort of born in this state, and so nonetheless, it just corresponds to the essence that eventually I skipped down the line of time to go to school in this neighborhood, which is a unique, like little neighborhood type of a development in of itself, which corresponds to a lot of houses in a large cluster that's off the beaten path of California, like in this little, almost in the middle of nowhere place where everybody's camping, basically. It's like everybody's camping in houses, basically, in the middle of nowhere, and they're all camping next to this university, and they ride bicycles everywhere like it's a large campsite. And that's what's unique and interesting and fun, and sort of corresponds to the greater interest of the Dinky Tech and Change for Game Studios brand, trying to be on brand, connecting with the on brand mechanism, just trying to like kind of give a little bit, I guess, of a shout out to Isla Vista in of itself, which is the small little town. It's a surf town, it's a skate town, but really it's a mashup of California. The whole town in of itself is like everyone from California, different people that sort of like, they didn't just exactly fit in where their exact like specific town that was wherever they were from, and so everybody congregated in this small town called Isla Vista, where people and animals, small little off the beaten path animals, all have resided here, and then like they just made a city here. They made a pretty significant campsite city with a bunch of houses. There's like 30,000 students or something to that effect. It's grown since I was here 20 years ago, or as an undergraduate 20 years ago. And nonetheless, the whole purpose of mentioning it is because it's such a unique land, and it has to do with brand. The essence and the purpose of going to school, of going to college to begin with, is, I think, corresponds very much to the culture and the brand of the people that you want to be around necessarily. And it's hard to actually get a depiction of what that is unless you actually kind of, it's not that you luck out, but you have to do a little bit of research to connect like with the soul, with the mindset, with wherever this place is when you're going to college, to actually connect with your soul brand. You're connecting with your soul brand when you go to college, because you're in essence trying to develop a birth to whatever it is you're in the future, and you're trying to gather the data of what it is that you're trying to be birthed from in terms of a culture that's like kind of a professional culture a little bit, and that's what actually spawns and spins out in every detail from where you live, the corresponding aspect of the culture development, the existing culture, the direction of the cultural trending theme of how it's unfolding sort of in the future, and basically where the people are all coming from, and how it sort of like actually comes together in like a collaborative way from where everybody's coming from to like actually like be birthing your trajectory in terms of its own trajectory, in terms of your alignment in a parallel sense in your own trajectory alongside of and aligned with where you're going to school and who also goes to school there and whatever the culture is based around, because realistically that's what school is all about. That's what college is all about, more or less. If you're going to college, that's what you're getting, is a cultural experience that corresponds to the actual people that are going there as well, that are trying to better their lives, that are trying to make their sort of collective connection to each other, basically what the payments more or less relate to. It's not exactly based around knowledge, it's based around the concept that relates to the idea that employers can see that you can facilitate finishing something such as a degree, and then that's their social proof, but in addition they see that you get that what you get all on internally is other students that correspond and coincide in terms of their careers, their methodologies, their mindsets that also are alongside and a parallel of their trajectories to yours in essence. And so that's why Dinky Tech and Change for Game Studios is on brand with Isla Vista. It's a shout out to Isla Vista because it's off the beaten path. It's just this collaborative neighborhood territory which is in the middle of nowhere. Everybody's sort of tripping out in their own mindset because it's very much like kind of a hippie town. At the same time, it's like it's rooted in seriousness, it's rooted in business, it's rooted in the mindset that people actually had to do. They had to do well in school to be able to make it into this school because it's a top top school among some lists that are out there in terms of some top school lists. It's top in engineering, it's top in a handful of things. And nonetheless, we also want to talk about today that there are a lot of animals out here. There's a lot of animals, there's a lot of off the beaten path creatures and critters nonetheless, and that's what makes it a unique culture space. It's very unique. It's like out in the middle of nowhere. Like I said, it's kind of like a camping area where everybody's just camping in their houses and everybody's actually partying too. It's a notorious party school, and that's ultimately what makes it unique because it's party school on the front, but it's an engineering school on the back, which is one of the best engineering schools in the country. And nonetheless, when it comes down to that, it's in the middle of Northern California, which is the significant Silicon Valley, many best companies in the world territory. And then at the same time, below Santa Barbara is Los Angeles, which is the film area. So it's this collaboration of these mindsets, realistically, meeting in the middle in this campground, in the middle of nowhere where people are partying. They do like illicit substances and things like this. So they really try to connect with the nature. And at the same time, there's animals. There's crazy animals, like there's raccoons and there's skunks like no other. And so really what we're trying to refine this little podcast about, at the same time, while we're trying to make a bit of a message that's a little more specific, is something called nuddist Buddhist. Being a nuddist Buddhist in business, typically being a nuddist Buddhist has a negative characteristic. So a crazy little story from a couple days ago is that there was a skunk. Basically, there was a skunk, and he was in the middle of the street, and he seemed like he was actually kind of in danger. And I was a little bit cruising around, and I was just sort of seeing actually two skunks, and they looked like they were young skunks. And only cars sometimes would come around at that time of the day, and so it was like sparse cars in the street. But nonetheless, these two skunks that seemed like young, and they seemed a little like they were just not, really weary of necessarily the fact that it was the street per se, even though they were, but they weren't, because it was just like late at night, and so they were getting focused on maybe some of the, some other attributes of the street. And nonetheless, I started to walk towards them and just try to make sure that they were going to have an idea or an understanding that basically they needed to move away from the street because the skunks are everywhere in Isla Vista, California. And so basically one of the unique characteristics which is unique about the area. But so they're used to humans, so they saw me walking up to them, and then basically what I'm talking about is nuddist Buddhist. So this skunk basically illustrated something called nuddist Buddhist, so as opposed to getting scared from me, so we're talking about two things. Like nuddist Buddhist is basically, it's like a synergy of two weird things, two weird and crazy things. And typically in business, nuddist Buddhist actually throws people off. It turns people away. Typically it's a negative sign. It's a negative symbol, in other words. Nuddist Buddhist means A, you're a nudist, and B, you're a Buddhist. So if you have both of those things, usually it turns people off, because people in the world, in general, in life, in the world of networking, want to trust other people, but they need something unique about other people to be able to trust them and want to be able to work with them and want to find something that's unique and a unique attribute. So if you're a nuddist Buddhist, it means you're two things, and that's not necessarily trustworthy, because it sounds like you're trying to make things up, to be quite honest, because you want to be something unique and unusual. So you're either a nudist or you're a Buddhist, and that's what the saying comes from, is if you're trying to be both, that it's untrustworthy, and it sounds like you're actually just trying to be some fake guru or some person who's just putting on a ruse, and that therefore is not trustworthy. You want to be niched down, you want to be focused on either being a nudist or a Buddhist, and that's what the saying comes from. And so it's typically seen as a negative and not trustworthy thing. And the bottom line is that in this episode, we're trying to identify the concept of being in business and looking to business as a nudist Buddhist as a positive thing, because in essence, you want to find, basically, to try to find success, to try to narrow down and nail down success, the ability to try to find business industry niches that you want to go into to be able to find a business for success, the ability to find and gather and gain business success based around the concept around finding a nudist Buddhist principle, finding a nudist Buddhist market, finding a nudist Buddhist avenue in business to be able to move in the direction of, so that therefore, when you have a nudist Buddhist process that you have decided to is demand in the marketplace that you think is worth pursuing, that is actually the fit, that is the shoe to try to move forward in that direction. Once you've sort of gathered that connection that mental connection, that is something that you have found necessarily. A nudist Buddhist marketplace means that you have found a niche in two different directions that crosses over, and where it crosses over in the middle is the uniqueness that's more unique than just regular average uniqueness, and it's like double uniqueness. I'm not going to say unicorn status. I don't really even have enough wherewithal to talk about unicorn status, but nonetheless, which means extreme uniqueness. But nonetheless, what we're talking about is nudist Buddhist business avenues to pursue, because that, I think, is the checks and balances game to get the understanding that something is worth pursuing in business. If it's a nudist Buddhist business, it means A, it's a unique niche in one direction, and then on top of that, it's something that overlays on top of that in another direction that's unique and interesting in a separate in a separate fashion in of itself. So now going back to the story of the skunk in the street, as I was walking up to the skunk in the street, and I was trying to tell it to get out of the road, one out of the two skunks listened to me, and he got out of the street, and he started scampering off into the bush. Excuse me. So the second skunk, though, he did not listen to me necessarily, and as opposed to directly listening to me, there was actually a seagull that was dead, that was run over, and he was in the middle of the street. A dead seagull was roadkill in the middle of the street, and he was just sitting there. And as opposed to running out of the street, skunk number 2 got an inkling for something that smelled good or tasty, perhaps while he was in the street to begin with. But nonetheless, as opposed to taking the interest to try to move elsewhere, he just kind of found his way across to this seagull that was in the street, and they were out and about looking for food anyway, and so he just grabbed and focused and decided to put all of his energy on grabbing this seagull that was a dead seagull in the street, to just grab the dead seagull that was roadkill and start dragging him out of the street and start eating him and start munching on him out of the street. But he was wise enough to at least get him off the street before he started munching on him. But he still started munching too close to the street. So I still tried to keep walking towards him so that he would just continue to move away from the street, basically. And he got a little backed up on some other thing, but he was still too close to the street. So I kept just saying, move away from the street, and he eventually did. He moved his butt all the way back to one of the fences, and so he still continued to munch on the dead roadkill seagull, which was a little bit disgusting nonetheless. But I mean, I'm talking about this because in this instance the skunk was a nudist Buddhist, which is kind of a joke obviously, but in the one sense he was a skunk that was in the street, which was pretty unique, and he was out of the ordinary. He was a skunk in the street, and they were just sitting in the street, and he was just being a skunk, but nonetheless he was a human relatable skunk, and so that was one aspect of uniqueness. And the second aspect is that he was a skunk that did not care that he was in front of me, in front of a human being, and he was being judged by me, by being judged by human eyeballs, eating a raw roadkill seagull live in real time in front of me, which to most people would be quite disgusting. And the point being, though, is that in many instances people can be aligned with the essence in the instance that, like, doing things that are nudist Buddhist like that because he's a skunk in the street and he's eating a raw, gross, disgusting roadkill seagull at the same time is something that will put people off necessarily. But realistically, it's the best way to try to take the weirdest chance possible to have the greatest chance of success possible, because you're doing something completely out of the ordinary in business that aligns with two different avenues of focus that hopefully can synergize on top of each other. One is the nudist avenue, one is the Buddhist avenue, so we want to synergize unique avenues to be able to travel in business to try to optimize the essence of the potential for the conceptual potential for the essence of, for the result of success. For the potential of, a result of success, ideally. And so that's the essence of the nudist Buddhist concept in this instance, trying to find an avenue to satisfy the nudist Buddhist pursuit of nudist Buddhist, as opposed to most people thinking that they will be judged as a nudist Buddhist. It's not really about telling people. The one difference is talking to other people and trying to build trust by building it into your brand, your nudist Buddhist aspect, and that makes people not trust you because you're trying to flaunt you're trying to tell people too much as opposed to doing, Whereas this skunk was just doing the nudist Buddhist. He was a skunk in the street and he was eating a roadkill seagull. So he was being the nudist Buddhist. He wasn't saying he was the nudist Buddhist. He just was. And that caused him to get the success of eating the raw, dead roadkill seagull, because in essence, that was his reward. He didn't care what I thought. Like, if he cared what I thought, he would have just ran out of the street. In essence, he would have been like thinking, oh no, like this person might kick me or something. This person might, he might feel like a little strange about this whole situation because I'm a skunk in the street and I'm eating a raw, dead roadkill seagull. But nonetheless, he went for it. He went for it all, and he had his roadkill seagull by the side of the road. And the point being is that not everyone should, but like people should just like be like, in other words, okay with just going for the nudist Buddhist aspect of trying things in business, even though it looks a little strange to the outside, and just be okay with eating a dead roadkill seagull by the side of the street, which is a joke obviously, but just like flying it up the flagpole, sometimes flying it up the flagpole and like having the gumption to take and fly up a nudist Buddhist flagpole up the flagpole to see how, or to see if it flies necessarily, because the potential is that the market can see it as potential market demand, and that they can potentially, accept it or be receptive to it necessarily. And so the nudist Buddhist concept is positive, not in talking. It's not always positive in talking. If you're talking to people and you're networking and you're interacting and you're telling people that you're a nudist Buddhist, they don't like it. They don't like to trust that. They don't like the idea that one nudist concept, it kind of cancels out the Buddhist concept. And so you don't get the credit for both. Because people don't like to trust that necessarily in talking, in networking, in speaking, in iterating in verbal words, but in doing, in terms of pursuing in the business avenue sense, having the business, the nudist Buddhist avenue for business pursuit is hopefully the most ideal way to get the checks and balances, that is something in business that you want to pursue. You have the nudist you have the Buddhist side, which is you found something unique and peculiar and very unique and out of the ordinary, and then you have the nudist side on top of that, which shows its double uniqueness to try to double down, So that's basically all. One thing that we've been talking about the last couple of days on the podcast is trying to pursue the electric scooter market. On the one hand, that's the Buddhist side, pursuing the electric scooter market, and then also we're trying to pursue a ground effects vehicle, which means something that can fly close to the ground, something similar to the Widget Works Airfish 8. It's called a Widget Works Airfish 8. If you Google that, it's a interesting low-flying ground effects vehicle, and we're trying to combine the unique rebuilding of electric scooters, which makes it so you can sit down, and we have different builds and different designs to be able to rebuild these types of electric scooters, and combining that with the essence of these ground effects vehicles. So ideally you can float down the street with a little more conceptual work and alignment and redesigning and reconfigurement if we can get conceptually aligned. And then this brings us back full circle to the Santa Barbara School, where we're at with the Santa Barbara School, trying to get some papers if possible, maybe that's what we're sort of trying to do here. And bring it back full circle to the essence and the origin of the brand, the alignment with the brand, which in essence is it corresponds to the brand, which is Dinky Tech and Change for Game Studios, way down the line, 20 years down the line it took to just get to the essence of being able to call it that. And then at the same time, having the essence of the full circle connection to the brand, combining with New York City, because New York City is where both basically have been for the most part for the last 20 years. For the most part, it basically, but not 100%, but nonetheless, that conceptualization to also realign with the jewelry development. The jewelry manufacturing development was a large part of today's research in essence, because it's kind of similar and it's relatable and it's receptive to the concept of making the electronic scooters with ground effects aligned with jewelry, because jewelry is something that's like merchandise to be able to sort of represent a lot of these electronic scooters with ground effects. It's merchandise to be able to support the brand, just like Porsche has jewelry, Ferrari has jewelry, for example, and this is what we're trying to align with, is this type of a brand. But today we're looking into jewelry manufacturing, and this very much, I think, just full circle has to do with the brand of Isla Vista and Santa Barbara and the school in Santa Barbara. And then combining that with New York City in of itself, the essence of jewelry being a significant business within New York City, and then combining that with the essence of looking into jewelry manufacturing today and looking at the depictions, looking at the imagery of more jewelry manufacturing, combined with the essence of the mindset of the interest to develop more electronic scooter market designs and like the attempt and interest and essence and a hopeful ability to be able to manufacture interesting and pretty looking that are aligned with jewelry looking electric scooters that are very interesting, pretty looking, like watches, like pretty watches, for example. Like pretty watches are have to be very well and very efficient, functional, high utility based machines inside of watches, and that's the kind of precision and ideal craftsmanship that we're trying to go with to align with the jewelry industry while being in the electronic scooter and the ground effects combine nudist, Buddhist, or whatever industry if possible. Anyways, this went a little long-winded, but nonetheless we're trying to give a few shout-outs to a few things and also try to acknowledge that the one of the main purposes for college to begin with is to align with your brand culture at a very young age, at the best age as possible, to align with your brand culture when you're trying to align with the other people that align with who or whatever you're trying to work towards in the long tail instance and interest of your business pursuit and process to develop a personal brand in the long tail as you pass through college as a brand development, brand post, mindset post space, place to chart and stake in the ground into your journey along the course of your journey as you go forth beyond the essence or the instance of college, past that into the instance of life. Passing college and using that post that's in the ground as a past post that hopefully relates to the rest of your brand, to the rest of your life, based on the corresponding culture that corresponds to the college, that corresponds to the community and the culture that hopefully can continue to relate to the rest of your life, based on the brand of the college, how that relates to your brand and the longer personal brand in life. And that's all for now. Thanks again, Dinky Tech and Change for Game Studios. Bye. Peace. Bye.
And let's all remember to push for world peace every single day. Let's all remember to push for world peace every single day. Let's push for world peace every single day. And also, let's remember to try to clear the animal shelters. Let's clear all the animal shelters in the world. Let's clear all the animal shelters in the world, because we can foster all the shelter animals. We can adopt all the shelter animals in the world. We can rescue all the shelter animals in the world. And we can also hire the shelter animals as healers. We can also hire the shelter animals as healers all throughout the world so that they don't have to be mistreated in animal shelters. And we can clear the animal shelters, and we can hire the shelter animals as healers throughout our communities. Hire the shelter animals as healers throughout our communities, because they also work for free and they could use better purpose and use better jobs and be able to add value and be therapeutic energy for humans and humanity, to help us be more harmonious as humans and among humanity for all the animals in the world, to clear all the animal shelters, to try to get them to transition their energy in terms of therapeutic energy to all humans, so we can clear the animal shelters to add value to humanity in terms of harmony if possible. And let's push for world peace every single day and clear the animal shelters every day. That's all for now. Thanks again, Dinky Tech and Change for Game Studios. Bye. Peace. Bye.